Hey, and welcome to Minimalist Gourmet. Today, I've got a fantastic episode for you guys. We're going to be making naan. This soft, fluffy bread is so delicious, but it's even better if you put on a little bit of garlic or butter. Of course, I never leave you hanging on this channel. I'm going to teach you how to make this all from scratch. Stick around until the end, though, because I'm going to show you how to make this into a sweet treat. That's right, I'm talking about dessert naan. I don't know if it's a thing, but hey, it's going to be a thing today, and I'm going to show you how to make it. So let's get crack-a-lackin'. We're going to start by blooming our yeast, so we need a little bit of water here that is warm. If you stick your finger in, it should be pleasantly warm, but not hot. If it's too hot, it'll kill the yeast. To this, we're going to add our active dry yeast along with a little bit of sugar so that it has something to eat. Stir it up well and let it sit at room temperature for about 5 or 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, our yeast is nice and foamy, meaning it's alive. If yours isn't foamy, that means your yeast is dead, also known as a non starter. Bad jokes aside, our yogurt goes in. I'm using Greek yogurt, but you can use any type of plain yogurt. Oil goes in. I'm using vegetable oil, but substitute for your favorite. And one egg gets cracked in before we mix everything very well and set it aside to work on the dry ingredients. The dry ingredients couldn't be simpler. In a large bowl, we're going to put our all purpose flour along with a little bit of salt and give it a mix. That's it. Then we're going to create a nice big well in the middle. This will give us a place to pour in our wet ingredients. We're going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients, just like I add a written recipe to every one of my videos in the description. While you're down there checking out that recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That way you don't miss out on any of these awesome recipes or the mediocre humor. Just keep mixing everything together until it forms this very shaggy dough and becomes very difficult to stir. We're going to turn this out onto a floured work surface and finish working it with our hands. Dust your countertop with a light coating of all-purpose flour and turn your dough out directly on top. We need to continue working this dough for about 5 minutes, and I like using the very simple technique of fold press, fold press, fold press. The last time I tried to make bread, it just didn't work out. The dough was too kneady. By working the dough, we're going to increase the gluten network, thus making it nice and chewy. Now see here, the dough is sticking a little bit, so we need to add a little bit more flour to our work surface. I'm also going to sprinkle the top of our dough ball with a little bit more flour. You don't need to be too concerned with adding a bit more flour, but don't go overboard because you don't want to dry this out. And as you work it, you can see it's coming together nicely into this nice smooth ball that holds together. So this is where I'm going to stop. I like to roll my dough under like this so that the seam is on the bottom, and this creates a nice smooth surface on top so I can put it in the bowl and let it rise. I wiped out my mixing bowl so it's pretty clean, and now I'm going to generously lubricate all of the surfaces with a little bit more vegetable oil so nothing sticks to the surface as our dough ball rises. I also like to hit the top of my dough ball with a little bit more oil here just so nothing dries out as it's sitting there before covering everything with a little bit of plastic wrap. Let this sit on your kitchen counter until doubled in size, which takes about 45 to 60 minutes. And while we're waiting for that to rise, that gives us more than enough time to make our garlic herb butter. In a small saucepan over medium-low heat, melt your butter before adding the salt. Next, we're going to put our garlic in once it hits a very light simmer and allow that garlic to infuse its garlicky goodness into our butter for about 2 minutes. Now, take it off the heat and let it sit at room temperature for a good 10 minutes before we put in all of our chopped cilantro. If you don't like cilantro, you can certainly use any other herbs that you like. Although this is technically ready to use immediately, I do recommend that you let it sit here for at least 10 or 15 minutes so the herbs can meld really well with that garlic and butter flavor. This also goes great on steak, pasta, potatoes, you name it. After an hour at room temperature, my dough has doubled in size. I've put a little bit of all purpose flour down on my work surface again, and I'm going to turn my dough right out on top of that. I'm also going to put a little bit more flour right on top so that nothing sticks to my hands as I work it. We need to portion this out, and you can do this in various ways. Some people like to roll it into a log and cut it, but I think a disc is a little bit better. It's a lot more visual for me. So I'm going to flatten this out into a disc and then cut that into half, cut those halves into half, and cut it in half one more time, making 8 equal sized pieces. Now we need to flatten these out. I'm going to spread a little bit more flour, and you can do this by using your hands and just pressing it out, old school style, but realistically, most of us are going to use a rolling pin. I don't actually have a rolling pin, but I do have this empty bottle. And before it was empty, it was filled with wine that I had to drink. Rolling pins aren't filled with wine, so you decide which one's really better. Use a little bit more flour to lube up everything so nothing sticks, and roll this out to about an eighth or quarter inch thick. The shape does not need to be perfect. In fact, I think an irregular shape for naan is a bit more traditional. As you roll these out, you can stack them together. They really shouldn't stick as long as there's a light dusting of flour between them, and it's going to make it a lot easier when you go to cook them. If you have a cast iron pan or something with a very thick, heavy bottom, go ahead and use that. I don't, so I'm going to go ahead and use my wok. Place in a bit of oil and allow this to come up completely to temperature on medium high heat. With our pan nice and hot, we're going to place in our first piece of dough. Try to make sure it's not wrinkled and comes in good contact with the bottom. We're going to cook it on this first side for about a minute and a half to 2 minutes until you start to see bubbles like this. That's a very good indication that it's ready to flip. Let's go ahead and check the underside with a spatula just by taking a peek underneath. All right, that looks good to me, so we're going to go ahead and flip it. It should be nice and brown just like this. We're going to cook it on the second side again for about a minute and a half to 2 minutes. Remember, there might be a little bit of smoke because you are cooking this pretty hot, so definitely run your exhaust fan. After 2 minutes here, I'm going to go ahead and give this a flip and take a look. It looks pretty done to me, but really I'm going to go ahead and feel it to check. That looks good. It's nice and fluffy but firm, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this off and allow it to sit on a cooling rack. As I was cooking the rest of the naan, I was munching on this piece, for quality control, and my God, was it good. Everything came out so nice and soft, super fluffy, and had a perfect chew to it. Couldn't be happier with the results. Now we have to slather on a nice dose of our garlic or butter to finish this off the right way. Dare I say, this is going to be the best naan you've ever had in your life. And if you're like me, you like a little something sweet after dinner. So let's get cracking with that dessert naan. For our dessert naan, we need to make a fantastic honey cinnamon butter. This begins by taking some room temperature butter and whipping it up. You certainly don't need to use electric beaters. I'm going to use it because I have it, but a spoon or a whisk will work equally as well. To our whipped up butter, we're going to add a bit of powdered sugar, a dash of cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla, and a good healthy dose of honey. Now, just mix this very well, incorporating a little bit of air as you beat it until it becomes nice, light, and fluffy like this, and you are ready to rock. It's time for dessert. We have another piece of naan and our whipped up honey butter. This stuff is so smooth and creamy, you wouldn't believe it. Look at this. We're just going to go ahead and take a little bit. I like to use the back of a spoon and spread it on top of another piece of naan. This honey butter goes great on things like toast, biscuits. You can even melt it and pour it over a little bit of popcorn. I've certainly never seen this on the menu at an Indian restaurant, but I think we should make it a thing. Once you've tried this, you're going to wonder where it's been your whole life. Whether you like your naan sweet or savory, I've got you covered. This recipe right here goes perfect with naan, so definitely check that out. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all here next week.